Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know, my name is Greg Khitrov, and I'm the owner and operator of Vintage Arms, a firearms store at the training center located in Yonkers, New York. At Vintage Arms, our mission is to support current and future law-abiding gun owners from beginning to end. Whether they are purchasing their first firearm, applying for a pistol license, seeking professional training, or continuing their education as responsible firearms owners. I figured I'll put together slides about the laws of carrying guns for now, and then the second edition is going to talk about Article 35, the use of deadly force, and when can it be used. And the reason I decided to put together this slide deck is really to help those who are going through the interview process, as Westchester County judges are now starting to ask more and more questions about the laws and regulations. With that being said, just a little bit of my background. I am an NRA training counselor, NRA instructor, DCJS instructor, USCCA instructor, DEC instructor, ASHI instructor. So I do teach CPR, first aid, and so on, stop the bleed, active shooter, and an active New York State medic. Through Vintage Arms, we offer firearms training, security guard courses, safety education, application assistance, and licensing support. Just to be clear, I do want to share that we do assist clients with New York State, New York City pistol license applications, as well as out-of-state licensing information for New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Maryland, Florida, and Arizona. That includes the required courses that are needed for those states. If you would like to, you have my contact information here. This is the store and our website. A lot of this information is available on our website. If you click on services, you'll be able to see the highlighted services. All right, well, let's get started. Well, if you own a firearm in New York, there's a good chance you might be breaking the law and you don't even know it. The legal landscape has shifted so dramatically that what was perfectly legal a few years ago could now land you behind bars for up to 15 years. That's not an exaggeration, that's the reality of New York gun ownership in 2026. And the most dangerous part is that telling a judge you didn't know about these changes won't save you from the felony conviction. So let's get into this because what I'm about to share could genuinely keep you out of prison. Here's the situation. New York has always been tough on gun owners, but after the Supreme Court Bruin decision back in 2022, everything changed. You think that ruling would have made things simpler for lawful gun owners, but New York responded by creating something called the CCIA, or Concealed Carry Improvement Act. And this piece of legislation has turned everyday carry into a legal minefield that most people don't fully understand. I'm going to try to break down the 5 most critical things you absolutely need to know, starting with the one that catches more people off guard than anything else. Even if you have completely valid concealed carry permit, there are now dozens of locations where carrying your firearm is a felony. Let that sink in for a moment. Your permit doesn't protect you in what the state calls sensitive locations, and the list is far more extensive than most gun owners realize. You cannot carry in any government buildings or courthouses. You cannot carry in hospitals, clinics, or any facility that provides healthcare services. Places of worships are off limits unless you have been specifically designated as security personnel. Libraries, public parks, playgrounds, and zoos are all prohibited. Any child care facilities, nursery schools, preschool, or summer camps fall under this restriction. Schools, colleges, and universities are completely off limits. Public transportation, including buses, subways, and trains, are no carry zones. Bars and restaurants that serve alcohol are prohibited. Theaters, stadiums, racetracks, museums, amusement parks, concert halls, conference centers, banquet halls, and gaming facilities are all on that list. Polling places during elections are restricted. If you're in New York City, Times Square itself is a designated sensitive location, though there's a lawsuit that's on books right now trying to strike it down. And here's one that surprises people. Public gatherings like protests or demonstrations are also prohibited zones. Walk into any of these places with your legally owned firearm and you've just committed a Class E felony, carrying up to 4 years in prison. The U.S. Supreme Court said that New York's restrictive gun license rules were unconstitutional. State lawmakers claimed they were forced to pass this new law after the Supreme Court struck down New York's restrictive gun licensing laws. Lawmakers in New York have now come up with a list of places that would ban guns. Guns are banned in many public places in New York, now that Governor Hochul signed a law that gives the state more ammunition in its fight against gun violence. But here's where it gets even more complicated, and this is the part that trips up even experienced gun owners. New York attempted to create a default rule that firearms could not be carried on private property, open to the public unless the owners posted a sign and otherwise gave express permission. That provision has been subject to ongoing litigations and is currently not enforceable in the same way it was originally written. However, private property owners may still prohibit firearms on their premises, and license holders must obey posted signs, direct instructions from property owners, and all other sensitive location restrictions under New York law. The bottom line is simple but critical. Before you go anywhere with your firearm, you need to know whether that location is prohibited. One wrong step, and you are facing felony charges. All right, well, now let's talk about what it actually takes to get a permit in the first place, because the process has become more demanding than ever before. To obtain a concealed carry permit in New York in 2026, you must be at least 21 years old. You need to complete an 18-hour training course consisting of 16 hours of classroom instructions plus 2 hours of live fire. Here at Vintage Arms, we hold this course at this point twice a month, and it's usually on weekends. You must provide 4 character references from people willing to vouch for your moral character. You are required to disclose every person living in your household, including your spouse, domestic partner, and adult children. You must sit for an in-person interview with your local licensing division in Westchester County. That would actually be with the judge. And you need to demonstrate good moral character without any mental health conditions that would make you a danger. By the way, some of the questions the judges ask are straight from this presentation. Now, here are the things. Here's the thing. After the Brewing decision, New York became a shall issue state, meaning you no longer have to prove a special need for self-defense. But the process itself remains incredibly time-consuming and expensive. In some counties, you're looking at 6 months to a full year before your permit comes through. And getting your permit is in the finish line. You must recertify every 3 years with the New York State Police. If you are in New York City, Westchester, Nassau, Suffolk counties, your permit actually expires every 3 years, and you are required and you require full renewal. Please remember, it's not always you will be notified to renew your license. You just put it on the calendar and make sure you renew in time for that license not to expire. Now, if you miss that deadline and your permit becomes invalid and carry after that date, you are committing a felony. 3 years ago, the Supreme Court struck down a century-old law in New York State restricting who could carry a concealed gun. The third thing you need to understand involves how you store your firearms, and the requirements are stricter than most people realize. If anyone under 18 lives in your home, or if anyone prohibited from owning firearms resides there, your guns must be secured with either trigger lock, a cable lock, or stored in a safe that meets specific standards for fire resistance, impact resistance, and tamper resistance. This isn't a recommendation, it's a legal requirement. If someone gains access to your firearm because you failed to store it properly, you can face criminal charges. Vehicle storage is where people constantly make mistakes. If you leave your gun unattended in your vehicle, it must be unloaded and locked in a hard side impact resistant, tamper resistant container that's completely hidden from view. Your glove box doesn't qualify, your center console doesn't qualify. You need an actual locked case or safe designed for this purpose. In New York City, the rules tighten even further. Your firearm must be unloaded in a locked case and completely out of sight at all times, even when you are sitting in the vehicle. The fourth major change involves semi-automatic rifles, and this catches a lot of people by surprise. Starting in September 2022, Purchasing and taking possession of a semi-automatic rifle in New York requires a separate license. Now, New York City is a little bit different because New York City, you have a license for every type of firearm that you want to purchase. In other words, if you have your concealed carry license, you can only buy handguns. If you want to buy a rifle or shotgun, you need to have a rifle and shotgun license. In Westchester County, you don't need to have a special rifle and shotgun license if you wish to purchase a non-semi-automatic rifle or any shotgun. However, if you do want to purchase a semi-automatic rifle specifically, you need to have an endorsement on your concealed carry license to specify that you are allowed to possess or purchase semi-automatic rifle license. If you already owned one before that date, you are grandfathered in and don't need additional licensing to keep it. But if you want to buy a new one, you must apply for semi-automatic rifle license through your local agency. Westchester County, that would be the Westchester County clerk. The minimum age to purchase or possess a semi-automatic rifle is now 21. Before this law, you could buy a rifle at 18. That's no longer the case. If you are under 21 and attempt to buy or take possession of a semi-automatic rifle, you are breaking the law. The only exception applies to those who lawfully obtained their rifle before the law has changed. Well, now it brings us to the fifth and perhaps the most sobering reality. The penalties for violations are severe, and prosecutors pursue these cases aggressively. Possessing a loaded firearm in public without a permit constitutes criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. That's a Class C felony, carrying up to 15 years in prison. Carrying into a sensitive location, even with a valid permit, is a Class E felony with up to 4 years. Possessing any firearms without proper license, even in your own home, can result in a felony charge. New York has mandatory minimum sentence for certain gun crimes, meaning judges are required to impose prison time. Probation is not an option. You're going to serve time. Beyond incarceration, a felony conviction means permanently losing your right to own firearms. You lose voting rights while incarcerated. Professional licenses can be revoked. Employment opportunities disappear. A permanent criminal record follows you for the rest of your life. Well, let me paint a scenario that illustrates how easy this can happen. Well, you have a valid concealed carry permit. You're carrying it legally. You stop at a library to pick up books for your child. You forgot that library are a sensitive location. Somebody notices your firearm and calls the police. Despite having no bad intentions, despite holding a valid permit, you've just committed a felony. That's the reality of these laws. Constant awareness is absolutely mandatory. In April of last year, Governor Hochul signed 3 additional gun laws that tighten restrictions even further. The first targets pistol converters, devices that convert semi-automatic pistols to full automatic operation. These are now explicitly illegal. The second strengthened requirements for credit card companies to track gun and ammunition purchases. And the third requires gun dealers to provide warnings about suicide and domestic violence risk at the point of sale. Courts battles over the Concealed Carry Improvement Act continues, but as of 2025, most provisions remain in effect. In April, the Supreme Court declined to review challenges to New York's sensitive locations, restrictions meaning they're staying in place. The Second Circuit upheld background checks requirements for ammunition purchases, unfortunately. What does that mean? Well, not only we do a background checks when you purchase a firearm, we have to do a background check when you purchase any ammunition. For non-residents, here's something critical. New York does not honor concealed carry permits from other states. You can, however, apply as a non-resident from another state, but the key factor here is you have to have a concealed carry license in the state where you reside. Okay, your out-of-state permit is completely invalid here. If you're traveling through New York with a firearm, it must be unloaded, locked in a case, and stored somewhere not easily accessible, for example, like your trunk. The Federal Firearms Owners Protection Act provides some protection for passing through without stopping, but if you stop for any reasons beyond guests or restroom breaks, you could be violating the state law. So what should you actually do to stay legal? If you want a concealed carry permit, start the application process immediately. Reach out to us. We can help you. We have tremendous amount of experience. Reach out to us at Vintage Arms Inc. or give us a call at 914-417-9972. We do offer the 18 hours required class. Gather your character references and submit your application. Prepare it for a lengthy wait. If you already have a permit, mark your recertification date right now. Don't miss that deadline under any circumstance. Again, I've mentioned that earlier. Don't rely on your jurisdiction to notify you that it's time for you to renew your license. It's your responsibility. Make sure to study the list of sensitive locations until you know them by heart. Before going anywhere with your firearm, verify it's not a prohibited place. When in doubt, leave your gun secured at home. Invest in proper storage equipment. Get a quality safe for your home and locking hard case for your vehicle. If you own or want to purchase a semi-automatic rifle, verify you have proper licensing through your local agency. Stay informed as laws continue to evolve. Court decisions happen. New regulations pass. Following reliable sources for updates are essential. And remember, everything shared here is only for educational purposes. It is not a legal advice. Gun laws are complex and every situation is unique. If you have specific questions or face any legal issues, consult with a qualified attorney. We work very closely with Peter Tillum at NewYorkTechDefense.com. They specialize in New York firearms law. Don't rely on any videos to defend yourself in court. The key takeaways is this: New York gun laws in 2026 are strict, complicated, and constantly changing. You need proper permits. You need to complete required training. You must recertify on schedule. Oh, yeah, and I forgot. And if you're in New York City, every 3 years, you have to do a 2-hour live fire qualification in order to renew. You cannot carry in sensitive locations, even with permit. You must store firearm properly. You need separate licensing for new semi-automatic rifle purchases. And the penalties for violations include years in prison, plus permanent loss of your gun rights. The difference between a law-abiding gun owner and a convicted felon in New York often comes down to knowing these rules and following them precisely. Well, I want to thank you very much for listening to me. If you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll always be happy to see you in our store. We're located at 401 Sawmill River Road in Yonkers, New York, and our contact information is right here on the screen. All right. Well, thank you again, and hope to see you soon. Stay safe out there.